Hey, welcome back, everybody. You know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is Coach's Corner. And you know me with names. I'm going to try to get it right. Suzanne Tregenza Moore.
You got it.
All right. And she is here because I was on her podcast, and it was so delightful to be on your podcast. And you interviewed me because I got a book,
Exactly.
and you got a book.
I sure do.
You want to talk about it?
Sure.
Let's
I'd
talk
love
about it.
to. Yeah, so my book is called Hang On Tight, Learn to Love the Roller Coaster of Entrepreneurship. And I call it my business memoir. It's a lot of stories from my life and my experiences and the lessons I learned through those and how they relate to the experiences I've had in entrepreneurship and the lessons I had to learn there in order to make it work. Because it's been a long road. And you know what? It was not a straight one.
Well, how long a road was it, and why wasn't it necessarily straight?
Well, so I've been working for myself since around 2010, end of 2010. And I've done a number of different things. I've been a virtual assistant. I have been a business coach and strategist, which I still am. But then I narrowed my focus to work with authors more specifically, and I should say with nonfiction authors more specifically, typically those who are entrepreneurs and who are writing thought leadership books and and hoping to use those to level up in their business. But what I write about in my book is that I mean I've made every mistake. I have um, you know, no anyone who's been an entrepreneur knows that the good days are really fabulous, but man, there are a lot of bad days in between where, you launch something and it flops, or you think that something is just going to connect with people amazingly, and people are like, I don't get it. Um, or whatever the case might be, right? I mean, and you make an investment and it doesn't turn out the way you expected it to or hoped it would, right? And all of those experiences add up to, the end result, which is probably they're all related to things you needed to learn anyway,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of pain in the process.
And yeah, and I was going to add, because an entrepreneur goes in because they're passionate about something, everything that goes wrong is personal. I mean, I know we're
Yes.
taught to disconnect while you're doing this as a professional effort, but it's your time, it's your money, it's your energy, it's everything that could
Well,
have
it's
been
your
going.
baby.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you. It's yours. It's you. You own it. It's
Yeah.
your brand, it's your identity. And so
Yeah.
anything that does go wrong, it's gonna
It's
hurt.
it, it hurts. Uh, you feel tremendously like a failure. You take it personally, right? Every time somebody says, I don't want to work with you, I can't afford you, I you're charging too much, or why do you charge so much, or whatever the case may be, right?
Mhm.
There's that little bit of like, well, am I charging too much, or am I worthy of this price, or why don't they like me, right?
I think it's
There
more
can
the latter. It's again, you're taking it personally. Yeah.
exactly, you're
Yeah.
taking it personally, but you end up in that circular like headspace of all the imposter syndrome stuff and all the negative thoughts, when in reality, typically when someone doesn't hire you for what you're offering, that has to do with them and not you. Now, the one caveat to that is, if it happens consistently, then what is happening is you're not conveying the value of what you're selling, right? And so then you need to work on your language, but it doesn't mean that what you're saying, that what you're selling doesn't have great value.
It's
What
just
it
that you're not
means is that
communicating.
you're not communicating the value properly.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's one of the lessons that's probably in your book. What are some of the
absolutely.
what are some of the others? Give us some clues and insights.
Yeah, so I talk a lot about fear in the book and how fear can, there are all different kinds of fear and they can really hold us back from our success. And that I look back on my experiences and I know the times that I was I was on the precipice of something amazing and I didn't get there because I like swooped myself back and said, I can't do this, right?
Mm.
Or this isn't quite right, or I had a perfectionist moment, right? And if I just move forward, if I just taken the next step, I think I would be that much further along than I am today. Um, but I had to go through that in order to get where I am today. And I'm pretty happy with where I am today. Um, I talk about leadership and what leadership really means to me. And it was interesting writing the book because I think we sort of have a lot of times we have thoughts about what we think about a certain topic, right? But when you sit down and you actually have to write out what you think about a certain topic, you're like, hold the phone. I really got to think about this because now I'm putting it down on paper. And even though you kind of have had this amorphous idea in your head, really putting it into words can solidify it for you. And that happened to me when I wrote my chapter on leadership. And and for me, I think a lot about leadership is not about you being at the helm, you being the face of something, right? To me, leadership is how are you bringing people along that they are receiving the value of what you're offering and that they are able to convert that, the value of what you teach, into value for them, right?
I like that.
Yeah. And so, thank you. And so so those are just two of the topics I talk a lot about in the book as well. Yeah.
So, what's the name of your book?
My book is Hang On Tight,
Mhm.
Learn to Love the Roller Coaster of Entrepreneurship.
How did you get that title? I mean, that's a
I know it's kind of crazy, right? It's interesting. I certainly had a good solid first draft before I had the title, and I didn't know what the title was. I just didn't. Um, but somewhere along the way, as I was writing, I made this comparison of the fact that when you are an entrepreneur, you've elected to take a ride on a roller coaster. And I describe the fact that there are people who elect to go on the roller coaster, and there are people who really would much prefer a straightforward train ride. Um, and so I use that metaphor in a couple different places throughout. And it was just kind of what my publisher and I pulled out and said, you know what, that would be a really good title.
cool.
And so that's how we came up with the title.
I love it.
Yeah.
You help now with your own show get other people's messages out there, those who have written a book or those who are in the process of writing a book and maybe even just thinking about writing a book
Yeah.
because you have that power and that authority. So how are you able to get your guest message out there? How are you able to clarify with your guest how they can communicate that message?
Well, so I don't help people write books.
Okay.
Um, I could barely write my own. Like I'm a published author, and if somebody said Suzanne Tregenza Moore, she's a writer, I'd be like, what? I'm a what? Um, I don't consider myself a writer per se, even though I write all the time. Um, I'm a marketer.
Okay.
That's how I think of myself. And what I do help people with is I help them launch their books on Amazon, and I help them with a whole system for doing that typically yields a bestseller for the book,
Cool.
bestseller status, and the book and the author. Um, and
So there's a
you know that
strategy.
there is absolutely a strategy.
Okay.
Yes,
So
there's
it's
a
not just guessing, throwing it out there.
No, 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 no. It's not willy-nilly. It's
Okay.
like this is the process I take everyone through, and usually they are a bestseller unless I've told them up front that for some reason I don't think they're going to be, like they don't have the network or they don't have the people supporting them, or
Oh,
something
well,
along
then
those
can we
lines.
talk about some of those nuances? What does it take at the foundational levels to kind of
Yeah.
ensure a bestseller? Are there foundational things?
Yeah, there are, right?
Okay.
So if somebody came to me and they had not been spending time networking and they had no social media connections and they had no email list and they have and what they have is a manuscript and that's it, right?
Mm,
And they said, Suzanne, can you help make me a bestseller? I'd be like, well, do you have social media? Do you have email? Do you have this? And if they said no to all that, I would probably say, listen, I would suggest that you spend a chunk of time working on building those things before you try to do a bestseller campaign.
okay.
Um, if you're
What are
not
you trying
willing,
to do with that? What's the thought behind that?
so the thought behind that is that I I help my clients build a team of people that become their megaphones on launch day.
Okay.
And if my clients don't have the network of megaphones, I can pretty much guarantee that they're not going to be a bestseller. So that doesn't mean that I couldn't help them with their launch, and I'd be willing to do that. And I have done that with
Right.
clients. But I, you know, a lot of the value of what I sell is that bestseller status, right? That is what people are willing to plunk down their credit card for. And so I'm always honest with people if I don't think that I can help them achieve that, because I would never take somebody's money if I didn't think I could help them achieve, the end result that I profess I typically can help them achieve.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I do. I help people with um with building a launch team, with providing that launch team everything they need in order to promote the book on a given day. And, you know, almost always it has yielded um a number one new release, or a top new release, I'll say. A top new release.
So if somebody's listening, watching this conversation,
Hmm.
should you be should they be thinking about a certain number, or is it more about the, quantity versus quality? Is it more about the quality of the connections or the number of connections that will make a book launch successful? Or is there
There's
what's
a
the balance?
balance.
Okay.
I call it a three-legged stool, right? Uh, one leg is people who have a lot of connections. Yeah, they make really good launch partners, right? The second leg is people who are really emotionally invested in your success.
Hmm.
They make really good launch partners. And the third leg is people who do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it.
They're probably the best
They
people.
make really good launch partners. And
Yeah.
so the ideal launch partner is someone who's all three of those things.
Okay.
Okay. But anyone who's any one of those things is a good launch partner.
So for my book, for instance, I didn't have the audience. It's always say write your book for an audience. That's what I
Hmm.
was always told. Um, I wrote this book because I mean it's an extension of who I was.
Hmm.
I went through a transformation process and I wanted to share that. I now have pieces of those three legs of the stool that you're talking about. People who
Hmm.
are passionately supporting what I'm doing. Maybe not the numbers, but and I like what you said. People who do what they're saying they're going to do. I
Yeah.
think they're the best kind of people. Um, so would I be able to, with your expertise, turn that around and say, hey, you know, let's do something a little bit differently to give your book a
Better exposure.
better exposure, better launch or a relaunch. Is there such a thing as a relaunch?
Absolutely. Well, I have clients who I've done the first edition of their book and the second edition of their book, and I have another one coming up. So, yes, I don't know if anything is possible,
That's a great answer.
right? Anything is possible is what I would say about that. Um, there certainly is an opportunity if you have a network to have a push for your book. But what I would say is just focus on marketing it now,
Hmm,
right? Because you've already done, it is launched, it is out there, right? And actually, this is something else I work with people on a lot because I think a lot of nonfiction authors, most of my clients will, or many nonfiction authors will be an entrepreneur and they decide to write a book because they want to show off their expertise, right?
mhm,
And they think that in writing the book, it's going to like solve all the problems for the marketing of their business. It's
hmm.
like, oh, I'm going to be a published author now. I might even be a best-selling author, right? And yes, absolutely, that those are both wonderful things to leverage. But I think often people kind of get lost in the message and they become, I call them muddled marketers, right? And suddenly they don't quite know their message anymore because it's like, well, am I selling the book? Am I selling a course? What am I selling? Am I selling myself? Like,
Hmm.
and so they need to re-hone that. And then they need a really crystal clear strategy around moving forward with the marketing of that book and with the marketing of their business. Because I find that often they don't have it and they're still struggling and they're frustrated. And so
So,
I have a program
okay, I was
uh,
about to say,
for
can you
that.
wave a magic wand and make that happen?
Well, I
Uh,
can't make there are no magic wands, at least none that work for me. Harry
okay,
Potter, totally different thing. No, I do not have a magic wand, but I do have a strategy and I do have a plan and I do have a step-by-step program.
good. And so, how long does that usually take? So, if somebody's at that stage where, you know, they've got two more chapters to finish writing, they're thinking about the marketing, not quite sure how to go about it. They've heard this conversation. Suzanne is the person to go to. What's the first thing that you're going to tell them that's going to put them thinking about those things to do next?
So well, I mean, if someone's still writing the book, there are so many things. But what I will share, I have something that I'd love to share with your audience, like a free gift for your audience, if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I have a free gift that you can get on my website, and it's called Do You Want to Shift from Author to Thought Leader? And it's a 7-step guide that will help you move from someone who's frustrated by their book sales to somebody who is really succeeding in their niche. And anyone who wants that can go to suzannetmoore.com/shift. And they can grab a copy of that. So that's number one. But number two, I mean, if they're just finishing their book, um, I cannot express how much value there is in a bestseller launch and really making your book a splash. And I will also say there are a lot of people out there doing 99-cent launches. It is not necessary to give your book away for 99 cents to have a bestseller launch. There are reasons you might choose to do that, but I often work with authors and we sell a full price book and we still get bestsellers. So I just want to put that out there because I think that's something that people hear a lot about and they give away the store, you know, and I hate that. So so that's number one. A bestseller launch can be exceptionally helpful because for the rest of your life, your bio will say the best-selling author of, right? the best-selling author of, and there is such credibility in that. Um,
It sounds good too.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and whatever you do, if you do not have a professional editor on board, make sure you have a professional editor, because when you put your book out, it is going to represent you for the rest of your life and beyond, right?
You do one more thing, and that's you interview authors on your podcast. And
I
so
do.
for so are they specifically your clients, or is it anybody who's written a book? So how does
So a lot of the authors, so my podcast is called All Things Authorpreneur.
okay.
Um, and a lot of the authors that I've interviewed are people who I have worked with in one capacity or another as clients, et cetera. But a lot are not. And what I really, I like to interview nonfiction authors or authors that have a big message in their book. So I have interviewed children's book authors because they have a message they're really trying to convey, and that's important to me. But I also interview people who work with authors, right? So I interview people who are ghostwriters or who are publishers or who are um, layout designers. Anyone who is helping an author get their book into the world is, someone I want to talk to, because I think one thing that happens is once you write a book, you realize like you almost get like I gotta write another
Ah,
one, right? You there's a feeling of
well,
like,
there's a
well, that wasn't as
accomplishment.
hard. That wasn't as
Yeah.
hard as I thought it was gonna be, right? And so I think that even if the people listening already have a book, they want to hear all this because they probably have in their head that they're going to do another one. And we talk a lot about marketing the book, the quality of the book, what it means to focus on a larger revenue generating offer, because nobody is paying the mortgage on book sales unless you're like Stephen King, right?
Right.
And actually he's not doing it on book sales, he's doing it on whatever the what's the money they give up front? I don't know.
Uh, um,
Anyway,
I don't know.
yeah, I can't think of the word right now.
So I know I've made the attempt, or I have connected you with some people who would, I think, be great guests on your
Yes,
show, who are all either writing, thinking about writing, or ghostwriters and editors. So hopefully, as we grow in our relationship, I'll continue to send you connections.
please do.
You could interview them on your show. Thank you so much. I think there was a lot of value here. And now I'm thinking about writing a second book,
There you
but I
go.
but I really need to sell my first. This has been another edition of Coach's Corner. We thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. Take care.